welcome to my channel. Subscribe, listen, and enjoy my stories every day. The theater buzzed with the low hum of an eager audience, their whispers blending with the soft rustling of programs and the gentle clinking of glasses at the bar. I adjusted my costume backstage, a regal jacket heavy with gold embroidery, feeling the familiar flutter of pre-performance nerves. As the stage manager signaled 5 minutes to curtain, I peeked through the heavy red drapes at the filling house. That's when I saw her, Clara, my wife, her laugh reaching me even from the distance, bright and carefree. She wasn't alone, her companion was a man I recognized vaguely, an actor from a rival theater company, his arm possessive around her shoulders. I pulled back, my heart pounding erratically. This was supposed to be my night, our night. I was playing Hamlet, a role I had dreamt of since I first trod the boards. Clara knew what this meant to me, yet here she was, publicly flaunting her disdain for our vows. I felt a hot rush of betrayal, but the call to places forced me to shelve my hurt. The show must go on. The performance began, and I poured every ounce of my tumult into Hamlet's tortured soul. My soliloquies were more impassioned, my grief more palpable. I was no longer just acting, I was living the betrayal. With each line, I stole glances at Clara, catching her laughing, her head thrown back, the man's hand on her knee. It was as if she was deliberately taunting me. Intermission came, and I could hold back no longer. I found them at the bar, wrapped in their private bubble of mirth. Marching up to them, I felt the eyes of the cast and some of the audience on me. This was not the stage, yet it felt like another performance, one I hadn't rehearsed. "Clara," I began, my voice low, "is this some kind of joke to you?" She turned, her smile faltering slightly as she took in my stern expression. "James, what are you?" "Don't. Just don't," I cut her off. The man beside her stood, his height imposing, but I was beyond caring. "You come here, on the biggest night of my life, and embarrass me like this? With him?" I gestured to her companion, who looked between us, his expression unreadable. Clara's face hardened. "I think you're overreacting. We're just watching the play." "Watching?" I scoffed. "No, you were doing far more than that. I saw you." Her companion finally spoke, his voice smooth, annoyingly calm. "Look, man, maybe this is something you two should talk about privately. Stay out of this." I snapped. The area around us grew uncomfortably silent. Clara grabbed my arm, her nails digging in. "Let's go backstage," she hissed. "We're causing a scene." Backstage was a blur of whispered accusations and bitter truths. Clara's confession spilled out amidst the shadowed props and dimly lit corridors. She had been seeing him for months. This night, this public display, had been a mistake, a momentary lapse in judgment, she claimed. I listened, each word a hammer to my heart, then left her standing alone among the ghostly echoes of our past performances. The second act was a haze. My revenge began to take shape with each of Hamlet's tormented thoughts. I would dismantle her life as she had mine, piece by piece, starting with her reputation. As the curtain fell, and the applause rose like a storm around me, I knew that this performance was only the beginning. Our divorce would be my next act, her ruin ensured by the secrets I now held. Clara had played her part, and soon, she would realize the cost. The morning after my disastrous performance, the air in our apartment was thick with the remnants of last night's revelations. Clara, usually so poised and graceful, moved around the kitchen with a quiet desperation, as if the clatter of the dishes could drown out our strained silence. I leaned against the doorframe, coffee in hand, watching her avoid my gaze. "We need to talk about what happens next," I stated, breaking the ice that had formed overnight. Clara flinched, then turned to face me, her eyes wary. "James, I know I've made mistakes." "Mistakes?" I interrupted, the word bitter in my mouth. Is that what we're calling it now? She sighed, placing the dishes down with a clatter. What do you want from me? Truth. Honesty. Something I haven't had from you in a long time. I walked over and placed my cup on the counter, closing the distance between us. I want a divorce, Clara. Her face paled, but she nodded slowly. If that's what you want, I won't fight you on it. I almost laughed. No, you won't. Because if you do, everyone will know about your affair. Your fans, your directors, the community you cherish so much. You wouldn't, she whispered, disbelief and fear mingling in her tone. Watch me, I replied coldly. The threat hung between us, heavy and ominous. The next few days were a whirlwind of legal consultations and discreet inquiries. I had decided to strike where it would hurt her the most, her career. Through a well-placed friend, I leaked snippets of Clara's affair to the gossip columns, careful to keep my name out of it. The theater community thrived on drama, but it was unforgiving to those caught in it. Meanwhile, our professional circles began buzzing with rumors and whispers. Clara's phone was incessant, buzzing with calls she left unanswered. Watching her, a part of me felt a pang of the old affection, quickly smothered by the fresh memory of her betrayal. One evening, as I was sorting through some mail, I found an invitation to a gala where Clara was supposed to receive an award for her contribution to local theater. It was the perfect opportunity. I picked up my phone and dialed the number of an influential critic I knew from the newspaper. Hello, Mark. It's James. I have a story for you, but it needs to stay off the record. His interest was piqued. I'm listening. I met with Mark the following day, handing him the evidence of Clara's affair, including photos and texts I had secretly copied from her phone. She's not the devoted artist everyone thinks she is, I told him. Mark nodded, understanding the implications. This will cause quite the stir if it gets out. It needs to get out, right before the gala. Can you manage that? He scribbled something in his notebook, then looked up, his expression unreadable. I'll see what I can do. You know this will ruin her. That's the point, I said, my voice void of emotion. The night of the gala arrived, and Clara left for the event, a semblance of hope in her eyes that made me momentarily hesitant. Yet, as she walked out the door, I steeled myself. This was retribution. Hours later, the story broke. Social media exploded with the news of Clara's affair, tarnishing her image just as she stepped onto the stage to accept her award. The live feed showed her face falling as whispers raced through the crowd, her moment of triumph crumbling into disgrace. Back home, I watched none of it. Instead, I sat in the quiet of our now undoubtedly temporary home, feeling the hollow victory settle in. I had taken her prized reputation, next would be our marriage. But as the silence stretched on, I began to wonder at the cost of this revenge. Was the satisfaction worth the remnants of the love I still felt? Or had my own heart become a casualty in this war I waged? The phone rang late into the night. I answered, expecting a lawyer or another reporter, but it was Clara, her voice small and broken. James, please, can we talk? As I listened, the full weight of what I'd set into motion pressed down on me, and I realized this was just the beginning. The phone was still pressed against my ear, Clara's plea hanging in the air, soft yet desperate. I hesitated, my resolve wavering slightly. Her voice had always been my undoing, even now, cracked with the weight of public shame. Why should we talk, Clara? My voice was colder than I intended, a shield against the surge of conflicting emotions. I just want a chance to explain, to make things right between us, if that's even possible. She was stumbling over her words, a stark contrast to the composed woman I had married. A bitter laugh escaped me. Make things right? How, Clara? You've lied, cheated. What's left to say? There's more to it, James. There's something you need to know about everything. Her voice was earnest, pleading. Curiosity pricked at me, battling the remnants of my anger. I'm listening, I finally said, not committing to anything more. Can I come over? Please, I need to explain this in person, not over the phone. The silence that followed was thick, charged with the gravity of our shattered lives. Finally, I agreed, setting the phone down with a sense of foreboding. What could she possibly say to alter the course of the wreckage she had caused? An hour later, Clara was at the door, her appearance markedly different from the glamorous, confident actress the public adored. Her eyes were rimmed with red, her face pale and drawn. I led her into the living room, the distance between us more than just physical. She took a deep breath, then began. James, I know I've hurt you, and I can never make up for that. But there's a reason why things happened the way they did. I didn't just meet him randomly. He's connected to my past, a part of my life I never told you about. I crossed my arms, skepticism coloring my tone. What are you talking about? Clara hesitated, then the floodgates opened. Before I met you, I was involved with some people, some very dangerous people in the theater underworld. I thought I had left it all behind, but he came back, threatening to expose my old life, to drag me back into it unless I did what he wanted. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. The theater underworld was notorious, a network of old debts and favors, often paid in the currency of careers and, occasionally, more sinister exchanges. So you sacrificed our marriage to protect your secrets? I asked, my voice a mix of anger and incredulity. It wasn't like that. I thought I could handle it, keep it away from you. I didn't want to drag you into my mess. Her voice cracked, laden with regret. I paced the room, each step a thud against the soft carpet, each thought a clash of past warmth and present chill. And the affair? It was never real. It was all staged, a show for those who needed to see it, she confessed, her eyes pleading for understanding. I stopped, turning to face her. You played your part well, I said dryly, the irony not lost on me. She reached out, her hand trembling. James, I'm so sorry. I know sorry isn't enough, but I am. I've ended it, for good. He won't bother us anymore. I've made sure of it. The room was heavy with the weight of her confession, the air thick with the ghosts of our past happiness. I looked at her, really looked, and saw the woman I had married, still there beneath the layers of deception and fear. What now, Clara? Where do we go from here? My voice was soft, resigned yet open. She swallowed hard, uncertainty flickering across her features. I don't know. I want to make things right, if you'll let me. If there's anything left to save. The echoes of her betrayal were still loud in my ears, but her vulnerability, her willingness to confront her past mistakes, it offered a sliver of something I hadn't expected. Maybe not forgiveness, not yet, but perhaps a path forward through the ruins. I'll think about it, I said finally, the decision heavy on my tongue. As she nodded, understanding the tentative peace offered, I realized the depth of the web we were entangled in. Retribution had seemed like the only path, but now, with all cards on the table, the game had changed. As she left, the door closing softly behind her, the silence settled around me, filled with the possibility of redemption or further ruin. The choices lay bare, each path fraught with shadows and light, and I knew the next steps would shape more than just our futures. They would define the very soul of our past commitments. In the days following Clara's confession, a storm brewed within me. Her words echoed, a constant murmur of betrayal and danger. She had explained, pleaded, even showed remorse, but the seeds of doubt and vengeance had taken root too deeply. I kept to myself, mulling over her story, dissecting every interaction we'd ever had, wondering how much of our life together had been a facade. The idea that Clara could manipulate not just her so-called lover but also me, gnawed at me incessantly. It begged the question, had anything been real? Late one evening, as I sat in the dim light of my study, the pieces began to fit together too neatly. The realization struck me with the force of a physical blow. It wasn't just Clara involved in this deception, there was another layer, one I had refused to see until now. I called Mark, the critic who had helped me expose Clara's affair. His voice was wary as he answered, "James. What's up? More dirt to spill?" "No," I said, my voice calm despite the churning inside. "I need information on someone. Someone from the theater underworld you mentioned before. A man who seems to have ties with a lot of actors and directors." There was a pause, and then Mark replied, "That's a dangerous game, James. But okay, who are we talking about?" I gave him the name of Clara's so-called lover, watching the night deepen outside my window. Mark promised to dig around and hung up. 2 days later, he called back. "James, you were right. This guy, he's bad news. But there's more. Seems your wife wasn't just a victim in his games. She's been in this deeper than you thought. They've been seen together, cozy and comfortable, way before she claimed he forced her back into his life." The final piece slotted into place, and with it, a cold, hard resolve settled over me. It wasn't just a staged affair, it was a staged life. My entire marriage had been a lie, a carefully orchestrated play for an audience of one, me. The plan formed quickly after that. If my life had been a stage, then it was time for the final, devastating act. I invited Clara to meet me at our favorite restaurant, a public place where she felt safe, comfortable. As she sat down, looking cautiously hopeful, I smiled. It was the smile of a man who had nothing left to lose. "Clara, I've been thinking about everything you said," I began, watching her relax slightly. "And I want you to know, I understand now. I understand everything." Her eyes lit up with relief, a tragic mirror to her deceit. "Oh, James, thank you. I knew you would. We can." "I understand," I interrupted, "that you never stopped lying to me. That this partnership with him was your idea as much as it was his." The color drained from her face. "James, no more lies, Clara," I said sharply. "I know about the meetings, the plans, the way you two have been using your connections to manipulate not just me but many others. It's over." She tried to speak, to salvage the ruins, but I raised my hand, stopping her. "This is the end, Clara. For us, for your career, for everything you've built on lies." I stood, leaning in close. "By tomorrow, everyone will know the truth. I've made sure of it. The papers, the community, the social media, no one will work with you again." Clara's face crumpled, the public mask falling away to reveal raw, unfiltered fear. "James, please, you can't." "I can. I did." I turned to leave, her sobs fading behind me. The revenge was complete, merciless. It shattered her world as she had shattered mine. But as I walked away, the hollow victory ate at me. There was no joy in this win, only the bitter aftertaste of betrayal and a lingering question of what had ever been real between us. In the end, our paths diverged irreparably, not just because of her deceit, but because of the hatred and vengeance it had birthed in me. I had become as much a creature of revenge as she had been of lies, and in that, we were both destroyed. As I disappeared into the night, the city lights blurred around me, a stark reminder that in the theater of life, sometimes the curtain falls not with applause, but with silence.